So there are 5 factors that you need to know about to attract a lender. Well, the first one is income and consistency. So what's that mean? All that banks care about is whether or not you can repay your loan. When you take a home mortgage, and we'll get into this in more detail later, you want to put as little money into your down payment as you need to. Now, why do you do that? Because once you put the money in, you're going to have to apply to the bank and prove to them that you're able to get your money back. So why give it to them to begin with? Let's put the money somewhere that's safe and sound, rather than giving it to the bank and then having to apply and beg for them to give you your money back. We don't want to do that. But that all is predicated on the idea of income and consistency. So what's that mean? Well, how long have you been at your job? How many pay stubs can we show? If you're a pay stub person, if you're a W-2 employee, you work for a company, that's great. We want to see that you've been in the business that you're in for at least 2 years, preferably with the same company, but it's not required. What's required is that you've been in the same business for 2 full years. Now, there has to be an explanation. The second factor is your debt management. Now, what does that mean? Debt management is how much debt are you carrying relative to the amount of credit that you have available to you. Now, we want to make sure we're paying our bills on time and that we're not taking too much debt. But how much is too much? Well, here's a general rule of thumb. To get the highest credit score available, you don't want to use more than 30% of the available credit that they've given you. So, for example, they gave you a $1,000 credit line. Visa gave you a $1,000 credit line. You don't ever want to be over $300 of amount that you owe on that credit line when you go to apply for your mortgage. And in fact, you should probably make those adjustments to the amount of debt that you have before we ever pull your credit report. Because the credit report is going to be good for 30 days. The company, the bank, is going to pull a second credit report right before they fund your loan to make sure that the debt is still where we expect it to be, what you presented to us. So we want to make those adjustments before you get into the transaction. That's going to raise your credit score. We'll talk about that later. That's going to make your debt ratios lower, and it's going to make your debt management look like it's in a more responsible place. So we just want to make sure that we're planning for that. The third factor is how much total debt do you have? So, for example, you have 5 credit cards. Those credit cards total $5,000, and you're using $5,000. Well, again, we want to drop that down to 30%, but if we can at least get it to 50%, so we're going to pay off $2,500 of that debt, that's going to put you in a stronger position. When we talk about debt that you have, we also start thinking about, as a bank, as an underwriter, we'll start thinking about your debt ratio. Now, a debt ratio is how much debt do you have in comparison to how much income you make. Now, debt is very specific. We don't think about everything. For example, a bank is not going to consider your mortgage, is not going to consider your water bill. We don't look at that. We only look at what's on the credit report and how much your taxes and insurance and mortgage will cost you. Those are the only things we consider. The fourth factor is your liquid assets. Now, banks want to see that you are able to pay. Remember what I said before, they only care, can you continue to pay your mortgage over the course of time? So if your liquid assets are 0, that's going to equal a feature, and that could potentially lead you to a higher interest rate. So we want to make sure that you have at least 3 months of savings, preferably 6 or 12 months of savings to cover your mortgage and your debt, so that we can keep that total debt management, that factor number 2, in a responsible place when we present it to the underwriter. Liquid assets can be created by things like gift funds. We can get a letter from a family member or friend that says they've provided you the liquid assets that you need to verify and to comply with this particular item in the underwriting process. Now, you can get the letter, or you could just have somebody give you the money and let it sit in your account for 60 days or more without touching it. After 60 days, that money is considered seasoned. It means the underwriter isn't going to ask any questions about where it came from. They don't care. It's not part of the underwriting criteria, And remember, underwriting today goes back at least 50 years. So what we do today is actually being impacted by how the world was 50 years ago. A lot of the underwriting standards have not been updated, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't have to get into it now, but just understand that we're trying to prove and explain ourselves in a way that's not just in a snapshot of today, but that snapshot actually goes back as much as 50 years when the underwriter's looking at it. So even though we think it doesn't make much sense, we have to be sensitive to that and just accept that that's the way it is. So we need to create liquid assets. Either we need to accept we're going to have a higher interest rate because we are buying a feature, or we can have someone deposit money into our account for 60 days and then stay there through the loan process. That would qualify. Or we can get a gift letter and some gift funds that says someone we know is giving us the money so that we can buy our home and to fulfill this feature. And the fifth factor is your credit score. Now, generally speaking, credit scores range anywhere from 300 up to about 900. 900 being the best, meaning to get a 900 credit score, you have to have had your credit accounts for many, many years, more than 20, I'd say. You want to not be using any of that credit or use 30% or less of it. You want to have paid it over and over consistently every single month without a problem. And you want to have a good mix of credit. Now, credit is broken up into three different areas. You've got mortgages, which are the most powerful type of credit you can get. It impacts your credit score at the highest level. You have lease credit, car leases, installment loans, things like that, student loans. Those are all installment loans, meaning they go on for a period of time, there's a fixed amount of money, and then when it's paid, it goes away and it's limited. And then you have revolving loans. Credit cards are a good example of a revolving loan. These are credit accounts that can go up and can go down every month depending on how much you pay or whether or not the bank increases or decreases your credit line